So hi, my name's Declan from Point Blank, and we're here with, I think you'll all agree, is probably one of the most important people in UK electronic music. Mr. Daniel Miller, please put your hands together. And we're just going to talk a little bit about hardware renaissance and modular synths, and he's going to give us a bit of a demo. But before we get into any of that, we're just going to get a bit of history. So what were your first encounters with synths, and what did you think at the time? What excited you?
I was at art college at the time at Guildford in Surrey. I was actually studying film and TV, but we had some complementary studies lectures sometimes. There was a guy who was quite well known in the underground at the time, a guy called Ron Geesin. He was a poet and a sound artist, and he'd worked with people like Pink Floyd, and he did a lot of tape manipulation and collage and things like that. Anyway, he came to do a talk at our college, and he'd just bought a Synthi AKS, which is the suitcase version of the VCS3 with a little pin matrix that people like Brian Eno and Jean-Michel Jarre and people like that made famous. He'd only just got it, so he didn't even really know how to use it. But he set it up in the room, and there's about 10 of us, I think, in the class, because as usual with most colleges, most people don't bother to turn up. So there's only 10 of us, which was good. And we just started playing around with it, and I just thought it was magical. I thought, these are the kind of sounds that I had in my head for a while, and there I was actually somehow being able to create them.
So up until that point, had you been making music?
I'd been making music, if you want to call it that. I was in a band, kind of a blues band, and I played guitar really, really badly. I mean, super badly. But I also used to when I was not playing in the band, I used to just sit around making noise with the guitar with like metal objects and stuff like that. I didn't really know what I was doing, I just enjoyed the sound of it. So I was kind of into the sort of sound aspect as opposed to the tonal aspect before that. So that was my first encounter. But, at the time, synthesizers were very, very expensive and kind of inaccessible to most people. So it was something that I remained interested in, but wasn't able to actually engage properly in an actual synthesizer, even though I did sort of tape loop experiments and things like that till quite a lot long after that. So
what did you think at the time? I mean, do you think this is a bit of a fad, the synth experimental aspect of things, or do you think this is actually the future of music?
Well, I don't know if I thought it was at that time, I don't know if I thought it was the future of music. I definitely didn't, I just thought it was very exciting for me personally. I didn't know how other people, Switched On Bach came out at that kind of, around that time, which I didn't like very much. Right. I mean, it was a brilliant technical exercise, to get all that. But I thought this is an amazing instrument. Why would you want to reproduce classical music using this?
So you thought
incredibly
it was wasted
with this. I mean, it's a brilliant record in the sense of how they made it and stuff like that. Incredible. But as a piece of actual music, I was disappointed because I thought there's so much potential of what this instrument could do, and they're just reproducing old music.
Sure. And as your career progressed, how did your studio grow from them? And was it the Mini Moog that kind of changed things for you? Because you mentioned price and accessibility.
Well, no, the Mini Moog was still when I got my first synth, which was like 1977. Which is quite a few years after that first encounter. Mini Moogs was really expensive still. But a couple of years before that, Roland and Korg, the Japanese companies, had started to release synthesizers. And so by 1977, when I was decided I wanted to buy one, they were already appearing second-hand on the second-hand market. So my first synth was a Korg 700S, which is brilliant, which I still have, and is an absolutely fantastic synth.
Yeah.
It's so much better than it looks. It looks like the kind of thing you put on top of an organ to play like a flute melody or something, but you can get some amazing sounds from it. Anyway, so I bought that, and I bought a 4-track TEAC tape recorder. I was inspired by punk. And my original kind of love of electronic music. To put it in my head, electronic music or synthesizer was the ultimate punk instrument. Because you didn't have to learn any chords or anything like that. Punk rock bands still were like playing music. I wanted to make noise, and I thought the synthesizer was a kind of a real punk instrument.
Sure. And what were your first encounters with the modular synth aspect of synthesis?
Well, the 700S I had for a few years. I made a couple of records using it, and that was the only synth that I had. I loved it. And then I got more into the idea of understanding a bit more about synthesizers. And I managed to get hold of a second-hand ARP 2600, which is a semi-modular synth. So, like a Korg 700S or a Mini Moog, they've all got sound modules inside them, but they're all pre-connected. Whereas the ARP 2600 has pre-connected modules, but you can also override those connections with patch cords, these things here. So it actually was I saw an advert in Melody Maker for a huge amount of equipment being sold in a warehouse somewhere in South London. So I went down there, and they had two of everything. What it was the end of Elton John's world tour, and they were selling off all the equipment from the tour. And it was going pretty cheap, so I managed to get hold of a 2600, massive flight case with Elton John written on the side of it.
Do you still have that?
I ran out of. I've got the synth, but I ran out of space for the flight case.
Why do you think modulars have resurfaced recently?
That's a good question. I mean, there's a number of reasons. I think that there was analog synths in general, and there's a period of time between the release of the DX7 and Acid House, which was about 5 years or so, when analog synths went completely out of fashion. People stopped making them. People were selling them off really ridiculously cheaply because everybody wanted a digital synth because they thought that's the future. And of course, I don't know anybody who's used a DX7, but the sound engine's amazing, but the access to changing the sounds is a complete nightmare. And there's a few people who, like Brian Eno, who are known for having done that, but it was very hard and very unintuitive and not much fun to try and build the sounds. Then when Acid House came with all those squelchy 303 sounds, I really thought, wow, that sounds amazing. What's that? I can't get that on my DX7. And it was like a 303, which had been, in the skip really for the last 5 years. So I think that there's two parts to the story. That was, I think the resurgence in analog came around that time. I think with modular, I think there's a number of things. One is, people now, a lot of people's first experience is with synthesis is through software. And they never, and which is amazing, of course, to have all that equipment, all that possibilities in a laptop, but also there are the limitations to it. There are limitations to making sounds and all sorts of things. And I don't know exactly when, but around 10 years ago, the Eurorack system started. And before that, modulars, if you bought a modular, you bought a Moog modular, or you bought a Roland modular, or a Korg, they were closed systems. So you couldn't, first of all, they're unbelievably expensive, but they're also closed systems. So you couldn't put a Moog module in a Roland system, and you couldn't put a Korg module in a Moog system. They were closed systems. And then when Eurorack started, you probably know better than I, when did it start, 10 years ago, something like that?
Yeah,
roughly.
90s, yeah.
Yeah, maybe late 90s.
Late 90s.
Eurorack is a universal system, which I think Dutford maybe were the first people to use it. And then, so instead of being a closed system, it was an open system that anybody could make a module for and slot into it. And I think, and at a relatively low price compared to the old modulars. And I think that's one of the reasons these modular synths became accessible again to people. I think they were totally inaccessible for many years because of the price, and then people just stopped making them. But then when the Eurorack system started, and there's some other systems as well, but the Eurorack is the one that I think caused the revolution, really. People were able to get one or two modules to start with and then build up a system over time. So it didn't have to be a massive outlay of cash. And then when people started playing with them, they realized how much fun they were and how you could create things. You could go on this kind of journey of sound creation that you can't do in software, because software doesn't work like that. The other thing that's great, I love about modular synths, is the fact that you can never reproduce anything you've done. So it's very much kind of in the moment synthesis. Everything you're doing you'll never do that again. So I find that actually really exciting about that. It's a one-off experience every time.
Yeah, and you think software has played its part as a kind of introduction to the sound, and then you can move into modular synth at a much cheaper rate and then explore that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think if people are inspired by synthesis, will kind of naturally want to have access to everything. I mean, I'm not saying one is better than the other or anything like that. I mean, well, I don't know, I use, both, and very happy to do that. I'm very happy to be sitting in a hotel room or in a plane with a Moog modular on my laptop, or a Korg 700S on my laptop, not 700, 700. It's brilliant, but at the same time, it's not as much fun. And if it's not as much fun, it's ultimately it's not as creative, really, and it's harder to make your own sounds, I think.
Sure, yeah. So do you want to give us maybe a quick demo of how, because you have a bigger system at home, right?
I've got a slightly bigger system at home, yeah.
So you've just taken some modules to show today, basically.
I just grabbed, one of the good things about modular synthesis, you can just take stuff out, you can move it around. I mean, I don't know if any of you play Scrabble, but in Scrabble when you have a bunch of letters in front of you and you can't make a word out of them, and then you move them around, and all of a sudden a word comes to you that you can use. It's very much, I like that about the module, because I never use any logic in how I put the modules together, because you can just screw them in wherever you want. And sometimes just by moving the modules around, you get ideas that you never would have had before. So anyway, so this comes from this. I just grabbed some modules that I thought might be useful to as a kind of demonstration to show certain aspects of it. I think what the system shows you, it is a 6U Eurorack 19-inch case. It's got 11 modules in it, and I think one of the things it shows is that out of those 11 modules, there are 9 different manufacturers. So there's so many people now making modules. Sometimes they're one-person companies. Often they're one-person companies making just a couple of modules. Sometimes they grow into something bigger. Sometimes you think they're big companies, but actually they're not. They're tiny companies. Like Schweiman, for instance, I had the pleasure of spending some time with Walwa Schweiman, who's one of the most important module builders. And he makes some of the best quality things. And it's just a one-man operation. Right. It looks like really, but he does everything himself. It's incredible. Anyway, so there's 9 manufacturers. I think altogether there's over 700 modules now being made. It's quite daunting if you're starting out. But I will stop talking. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with a sine wave, because this is an oscillator here made by a company called Intelligel. I like sine waves because I actually just like listening to sine waves on their own. But also one of the things that I've really got into with the new wave of modular synthesis is wave shaping, and sine waves respond very well to wave shaping. So I'll just play you the sine wave quickly on its own, just so you get an idea of what that sounds like. Oops, I always put it in the wrong one. Here we go. Maybe I'll raise the pitch a bit. Okay, so that's just the raw sine wave going straight into a VCA and out to the PA system. So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to replug that and put it into a wave shaper. So you just hear what a wave shape, what the impact of just having that one module on the sine wave is. So that's just a sine wave going through a wave shaper. So you can see just by doing that, there's an incredible number of different tones you can create. So I'm going to take that out of there for a second, and I'm going to put it through a filter, because everybody likes filters. But what I'm going to do for the moment is just leave the filter open, so you won't really hear the effect of the filter, but it's just there in the patch. So it's there if I want to use it. Whoops. Classic kind of filter, just low pass filter with resonance. But I'll just leave that open. So we got a sound now. It's being treated by a couple of modules, both of which are voltage controllable. So maybe if we add some modulation to maybe this part of the wave shaper. So that's quite a nice sort of sweeping sound. This is an LFO, by the way, I just plugged in, made by a company called Pittsburgh Modular, who I assume are from Pittsburgh, but I don't know for sure. And so now I'm going to take an LFO. I've got another twin LFO here made by Schweiman. This is really nice because it goes into audio rate, so you can do kind of FM stuff with it. So I think I'm improvising, by the way, I didn't plan this, but I'm going to take the output of one of these LFOs and I'm going to put it into another input of the wave multiplier. So that's modulate. You can hear that sort of modulating another part of the and just by changing it slightly, you can get very different kind of sounds. Okay, that's quite nice. What I have here is called it's a module by another American company called Make Noise. It's called Function. It's based on an old Surge module from the 70s. Surge was a very important synth maker in the 70s, and this does a number of different things. It's an envelope generator and just attack and release. You can put it into cycle mode so that it becomes an LFO. You can put audio, you can put voltage into it and audio to treat it in different ways, like a kind of portamento effect. So what I'm going to do is I've got this on cycle here, you can see, and I'm going to modulate the filter with this to see what happens through the CV input here. So now you can hear that modulating the filter. I've turned the resonance up a bit.
So you could then like sequence that pattern. So you could you could sync that up with maybe like
I could
a
sync that with this. Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna. Oh, it's going down. Has it gone down in volume? Oh, that's just you. Okay, sorry. Scary. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to modulate this now. The speed of this, I'm going to modulate from this other LFO here. So it makes it a bit more interesting. In theory. It's not doing it, should be there, as they say. Oh, it is, yeah. Could you turn up in these speakers for a second, please? Thanks, so I can hear what. So you can hear it kind of breaking up. You can hear that this one is speeding up and slowing down because it's being controlled by that LFO here. What I might do is put that onto a square wave so it's a bit more. So what I'm going to do now, so we've got a sort of a basic, quite okay sound going here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change this. I'm going to take this. Oh, what did I just do? I've unplugged. Oh, unplugged the wrong one. Sorry. There we go. That happens all the time, by the way, especially as the module gets, a patch gets more and more complicated. You can't really see what's going on, and you don't actually know what's going on. But I'm going to. Yeah, so what I've done is I've taken this function generator out of the control voltage input of the filter and put it in as it's now going in as an audio signal, which I think is a bit more, maybe a bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do now is quickly set up a short sequence. What I've got here is I've got one of my favorite modules, which is this made by MFB from Berlin. It's called an SEQ01, and basically what it is, it's a programmable. Hang on, take it down a bit. Thanks. It's a programmable trigger machine. Basically, when it's very similar to like an 808 or a 909 in the way it's programmed. It's exactly the same. It's got all these. It's even got the names of drums on here, like bass drum, snare drum, hand clap, low tom, mid tom, high tom, because it's originally was designed to be used with the MFB drum modules. They make a whole set of drum modules. But actually what it's really useful for is just sending out triggers in time. So if you want to do anything you want, I mean, some people who do modular stuff aren't interested in doing things that are in time, and I'm not a lot of the time, but if you want to do timed things that are in time, sequence things, this is an amazing tool. Because you can run, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 different modules from just this one, with different rhythms from this one module. So you could, typically you'd be running a sequencer, maybe another channel would be doing a reset for the sequencer, another one might be triggering an envelope generator, another one might be triggering a resetting an LFO. It's just great. So anyway, I'll plug it in. So I'm going to I've programmed the bass drum track here, which is not a bass drum, and I'm plugging it into the clock input of one of these. This is a matrix sequencer, which is kind of, a lot of you will be familiar with like old school analog sequencers. They're basically 16-step sequences. You can create really great loops and stuff like this. This is like a 16-step sequence, a bit more complicated basically, and a lot more versatile. It's got 16 knobs, and each row can be triggered by its own clock, both vertically and horizontally. So you can make up quite complex rhythms and stuff with it. I'm not going to go too deeply. I'm just going to basically just start running it and see what happens right now. Now you can see I've plugged that output from the clock into the clock in of this sequencer, and it's running through. It's going to be doing like a. So I'll just for the hell of it, I'll take the CV out for this part of the sequence, and I'll put it into. I'll just try putting it into here and see what happens. So that's pretty like a. It's a sequence, right? But I'm going to make it move around much less.
And all of that's happening from a single oscillator?
Sorry?
All of it's happening from a single oscillator?
Yeah, single oscillator. Yeah. This is just one oscillator going, so I'm going to make it a bit more. So what's happening is that it's playing through 16 steps. And it's a bit fucked up, which is nice. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a reset in. I'm going to program another channel of this sequencer to reset at certain points in the sequence, so it's a bit less regular. I'm going to set all these to 0 again, just so you get a sense of it. So that's a bit of more of an irregular sequence going there.
Yeah.
What I might do is I might take another clock out of here and put it into. This is going to take a four-step sequence now and put it into the filter to see what happens with that, and trigger it from a kind of more arbitrary sequence. So that clock that I've programmed to HC, I don't know if you can see the letters there, is now going into the CV control of the filter.
So yeah, Daniel, it'd be great to sit here and do this for hours, but
Yeah.
we're running out of time. So
Okay. Anyway, that's what came out. Oh, thank you. That's all I knew I was going to do there was start out with a sine wave, and everything else just did spontaneously. I don't think it was the most amazing sound, but it shows you the journey that you can take. And obviously, that was quite that you can look up and you'll realize that 12 hours have gone before you know it once you start playing with these things. So let me assure you of that. But that's kind of just an example of the sort of stuff that you couldn't do really with a software synth or an old school synth where things are pre-connected.
Yeah. So does anyone have any questions quickly?
Do you use drum modules, and if so, do you have any particular recommendations for drum modules? And sorry, my second question is, can you tell us a bit about the experience of setting up Mute Records and also the new label Liberation Technologies?
I've just, funny enough, I resisted getting drum modules for a long, long time because I thought it was kind of a bit too easy. But I recently got a couple because I got a module which isn't here actually, but it's cool. But it's made by the same guys who make the sequence. It's called a Trigger Riot, and it's I won't go into what it does exactly, but it's great to use with drum modules. And so I got a couple of drum modules to use with that, and I must say I'm enjoying it a lot. I think they're Tip Top Audio ones as well. Tip Top Audio.
Tip Top Audio.
Yeah. They're not that controllable, but they sound good, so that's the most important thing. Setting up Mute, that's a bigger question. Yeah. No, but I mean, it was all I can say is it wasn't planned, it was accidental, I didn't mean it to happen, I'm sorry, and that's all I can say really. I mean, the MS-20 is also great synth for treatments as well. So, to put a kind of very standard drum machine through an MS-20, you can get some really great sounds using the filter because the filters distort really nicely. MFB, the people who make this drum sequencer, also make drum modules as well, which are quite sophisticated. They also make some really great drum machines, all analog with sort of a lot of control over them. I think either using kind of very basic sounds and creating them with the MS-20, or something that can clock the MS-20. Have you got a sequencer with it as well, or
no?
So just something that will clock the MS-20 and run in sync with it with drums like the MFB stuff. They do all sorts of really not very fairly inexpensive small drum machines that sound really great because they're all analog and very kind of controllable.
Okay, please, one more time, put your hands together for Mr. Daniel Miller.
TVOD, TVOD, TVOD.
Every 2 weeks in the course, an assignment is set.
So once I've done my assignment, which is essentially a track, I upload it for my tutor to download, and he sends me back a DVR, which is a direct video response.
It's a video produced by your tutor that is sent to you personally every couple of weeks while you're studying, giving you immediate feedback on your production.
It's something that enables the students to have a one-to-one connection with their tutor.
You see all of the mouse movements and any parameter changes made by your tutor. It's kind of like sitting in the studio over their shoulder, watching what they're doing whilst they work.
And I think this kind of steel can sound is brilliant. I mean, that's a real kind of hook of the track, this. Maybe let's just try recording something in. The response that the tutor gives is completely tailored to the student's style of music or the level that they're at as well. So it might be nice to spice up this drum track by adding a delay, and you can see I've put one here in the return of the drum rack, and if we just apply that to the clap now, you see it has a really nice effect.
If you want to check out the whole range of online courses, go to pointblankonline.net.
Thank you.